So sophisticated. She's my recycling buddy.
They closed it.
Not permanently.
We're live. They're moving it to the landfill. We're live.
All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Facilities and Safety Committee meeting to order. This meeting was scheduled and posted as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. And so the items that we're going to have today on the agenda, the first item are also that this is an audio-video conference notice. You want me to?
You can just say that it's still in accordance.
It's still in accordance with the Governor Abbott's temporary suspension of open meetings laws issued on March 16th, 2020. This meeting will be conducted via audio-video conference and will be viewable for the public to review. Okay, let's move on into the agenda. The first item is going to be the presentation of our TRE funded projects from Mr. Tapia, who has just returned from his vacation. Looks like he got a sunburn too. So,
Ready.
okay, Oscar, would you lead us through these, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Powers and members of the committee and Dr. Cavazos, colleagues. The first item on the agenda for the TRE project is the Treasure Hills Elementary Classroom Wing addition. We've made quite a bit of progress. The new VCT floor has been installed and it is completed and it's been waxed, and so they're already starting to move in furniture and equipment from the current school over to the new wing. A lot of the punch list items are being worked on, minor issues. We do have some issues with the air conditioning and the controls. There's something going on with the controls and the equipment that are not communicating correctly, or there's some sensors that are tripping and little lights coming on. So they're trying to work through that. That's the whole purpose of the commissioning work, is to identify deficiencies in the system. So they're working through that. We're having some meetings with the engineers and the contractors and trying to get those little items resolved. But all the outside work, the sprinkler, irrigation, planting work is complete. And I think the keys, we're trying to get the keys turned over to us for the building so they can start assigning keys to all the teachers. Just the grass is already growing and germinating on the large grounds area. We got trees planted and plants. On the interior there you can see the tile work that was installed. It looks really nice. There's some more photos of a classroom. With the gray and blue. Some are gray and blue and green and orange, and different color schemes for the different levels. There's a blue concept. So very nice, very clean. You can see the sheen on the floor with the wax reflecting off the light fixtures and the window light. Looks very nice. That's the hallway upstairs with the green color and some of the another classroom shot there.
Oscar, let me interrupt you for just a second. Are these the tiles that originally weren't planned but were done because the floor wasn't finished properly?
Yes, they covered, this work was all to cover the stained concrete that was not accepted by the district.
So the ones, though, the photographs you've been showing us, like the one right now that's got the lime green stripes and the one before with the blue, that's all stuff that was added because they didn't do the first part right?
That's correct.
Wow, it looks terrific.
Yep.
It looks terrific. Go ahead.
Really nice. I like it better than the stained concrete that they were trying to get, but we just never could get the quality to an acceptable level.
It looks really nice. Please tell Bill Scoggins that too, that I think it's really came out very professional looking.
Okay. And these are the light fixtures that were hung from the skylight. You don't see them much during the day because the skylight will be reflecting sun in. But at nighttime when it's dark, these are the fixtures that will be illuminating that space. So it turned out pretty nice.
Just bulbs?
No, they're actual.
That's it on phase one. It was just a matter of getting those little AC issues worked out and a few little minor scratches and dents here and there, some cleanup work, some concrete that splashed up against some trim work that we're trying to clean up. And the fencing, I believe, was already complete. They just need to work on the lock and on the card swipe system. Other than that, the project's almost done. Any questions on that phase?
Hey, Oscar, can you go back, I just jumped in, can you show the flooring again, please?
I'm sorry you cut out, I couldn't hear that last part.
Do you mind going back to the flooring, please?
That one, or?
The blue one looks terrific.
That's the hallway, all the hallway
Look at that.
where we were having issues with it.
Boy, that looks terrific.
Yeah, that looks great.
Terrific.
Can you go back to the hall, yeah, the hallway? Yeah, that looks great.
You know, Oscar, it looks like they did this pretty quickly. I'm surprised that it's already done, or were you anticipating it being done this quickly?
We anticipated about 2 weeks, and that's about what it took. The hard part was waiting for the materials to come in, but once they came in, they did a floor
I know.
per week.
It actually looks better than,
Yeah, free.
yeah.
All right.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Oscar, it does look beautiful. I agree with Greg. It's just beautiful and so nicely done and clean and crisp. Looks great. Very welcoming. My question relates to what we've talked about several times, and I was going to wait until later to ask, but I think it's really appropriate at this point. When we discussed several months ago the concern about air quality and air exchange capacities, your comment was that you felt comfortable that with the new schools, because that's sort of built in. And so I'm wondering, has that been the case here? I mean, can you teach us a little bit about air quality, air exchange in terms of the infectious issues that are plaguing us now? And secondly, I wondered, are any of the windows openable?
The windows on the second floor are not operable. They're mainly for view.
Yeah, sure.
But what we do with the air conditioning systems now, as per, it's an ASHRAE code and building code under mechanical sections, they all, and energy codes too, they all require that we introduce fresh air from the outside to be mixed in with the air that's recirculating on the inside. The old AC systems, they just circulated the indoor air, and you would only get fresh air when people would open the doors or any windows, people coming in and out. That was the only fresh air you would get. So your CO2 levels would climb high when you had a lot of kids in the school and causing some problems. And then, of course, if you had moisture, we're starting to have that mold problem back in the 90s and the early 2000s. So the change in the codes are bringing in fresh air,
Another actual.
and that required the mechanical systems to be more robust to be able to strip the moisture out of. We're introducing new air into the building. We have a lot of humidity here, so it's better air quality, but it increased the cost of the energy consumption because the AC units had to be had to work harder and be sized a little bit bigger to be able to strip the moisture out of that new air being introduced. But your CO2 levels are now kept very, very low. So that's how we're handling that. What we're doing also right now as part of this COVID, to further provide clean air, is that we would normally change the air filters every month, every 4 weeks. We're gonna start changing them out every 2 to 3 weeks. And every time we change out the filters, we're gonna be spraying a disinfectant spray, kind of like a deodorizer that kills bacteria particles on the filter itself. And we're also spraying all the air conditioning coils. The coils are the ones that are very cold that the air blows through. And we're gonna be spraying the coils and the filters, so as the air blows through, it's circulating that decontamination or bacterial disinfectant that'll kill any particles, bacteria particles in the air or on the floor. So that's something additional we're doing right now with our maintenance department. I hope that helps.
Oh, yeah, that helps. That's very helpful. That's very helpful. I was wondering, how long does that disinfectant last?
About 1 to 2 weeks. We don't want to do it too often because then we can create too much aerosol and contaminants in the air that could be, some people may have a little reaction to the too much particles in the air, especially if you have asthmas and allergies, things like that. So a good balance every 2 to 3 weeks.
And you're intending to do that to every campus, for every campus?
Yes.
Great, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and you know, I really appreciate the education too. That's great. Thank you.
Well, let me remind everybody while we're on this topic that Dr. Cavazos is planning a walkthrough at on our August facilities meeting. We'll meet out there and probably maybe have our meeting there, and we will all socially distance and so forth, but we'll get a firsthand glance right before school starts. So just everybody mark your calendar for that. Okay, Oscar, thank you. Keep us on
We'll
track.
move on to the phase 2. This is the next phase that we're doing. And the contractor, we already signed the contract with Davila Construction. It was awarded at the last board meeting. They applied for their permits. They also had to apply for a permit with the state health department to get clearance for demolition. They checked for asbestos and our plans and things like that. The building was cleared of asbestos, and we had to wait 10 days. So today was the 10th day. So they're starting demolition later today or tomorrow morning of the old structure and get that project ongoing. They're also doing work on the front drive. We have that drive that goes in front of the cafeteria and it comes in and out. And then we have the little drive for the office area that goes in and out. And then there's a big green space in between. Well, that green space is going to be torn out and the drive's going to go all the way through nonstop from the cafeteria all the way to where the old office used to be. Right here where you see the cone on the left where that drive comes out, it's going to be one long continuous drive. And that's going to allow for more buses and cars to get off the road to improve the traffic circulation. The green canopy you see on the bottom left has already been taken out. It's already been demolished. It's no longer there. As you can see on that photo, that bulldozer tractor on the right, that big yellow machine, knocked it down already. We were allowed to do that work because it was not interior. And this right here, where this drive's coming out, that's the drive that comes out from the cafeteria drive. Well, now it's going to go straight all the way through that green space you see and go all the way to where the old canopy used to be. So that'll just allow for better circulation. That's some of the trenching work being done for the electrical power lines, water lines, things like that. That's the interior of the building's been cleaned out, cleared out. The old library on the right, you can see the trusses, even the drop ceiling's been taken out, the carpet's been taken out, and they're getting ready. They were just waiting to get the demolition started. Walking around, you'll also see some writings on the wall, some messages left by some old staff members, alumni. Here's one from an individual, Joseph Alberry, who worked there from 1985 to 1992. And he wrote the principal F. Payne and Linda Crable, Thompson, Olivo, Armstrong, Doty, Muniz, Stanton, and Todd One. So that's some good information. Really interesting to see up there. A couple of other ones. The one on the left, to the Big Bird Room. Thank you for fostering a love of learning and a love of Disney World. We watched the reel-to-reel in the Cookie Monster room. I finally rode the dinosaur ride. Thank you for putting dreams in my heart. I think that's David, something, I can't read the name, but I just thought it was an interesting comment. And the one on the right was, this was my home away from home. I love my time at Treasure Hills Elementary and the wonderful memories we made. Lupita Muniz, Treasure Hills Elementary. So if you walk around, and I think Shane and Brianna and their staff are gonna go around and take pictures of these as the building gets demolished. These are just some old memories and statements that we saw on the walls. Any comments on phase 2?
Oscar, it said substantial completion in April of next year. That's a pretty short time.
We're in July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February,
You think
March,
they'll make
April.
that?
That's 10 months. And the only thing we're doing here is the office building. It's a smaller building.
Oh.
The parking lot and the addition around the library addition with some GT classrooms and computer labs and a sensory room.
Okay.
So the scope is a lot smaller than the large 2-story wing that we did. It's just all the little pieces, a bunch of small pieces that are being done, phased in, so that's why it's taking a little long. But the buildings themselves, definitely by April, we should be substantially complete.
Okay.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering about parking. I know we've talked about where and locations, but I was just remembering that we've had an issue with adequacy and location, both of parking in some of our newer campuses, thinking specifically of Means, couple of others, that we had to go back in and correct, although they were relatively new buildings. So, Oscar, are we, have we addressed it from those two perspectives, you know, not just where is it going to be, but are we actually putting in or able to put in adequate parking and space-wise and in a safe location? Again, Rodriguez had to rely on parking on the highway. So I think we need to think about that with each building, and I actually have not asked that question before, so I thought I might want to check.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that we really looked at and
Good.
also working with the city. Over the years, we've had a lot of complaints from neighbors, from parents from the school during pickup drop-off that there was just too much traffic, everything was backed
Yeah.
up. And so the city has had conversations with about that. So when we were going to do this new project, we took advantage of this to, actually, we're tripling the amount of parking spaces we have on our site currently. And we also hired an engineering, traffic engineer to help us come up with maximize, to improve the traffic off-site and within our parking space. And we created three major drop-off points, one on the front of the kitchen office area that I talked about, one in that back long drive around the new building, a two-story building in the back, and then the big parking lot in front has another major pickup area. So all that was considered, and we feel we came up with a really good design, and the city engineering and traffic departments were very happy with the design as well.
Thank you so much. That sounds like a really good script for each time we, when we build a campus from now on, we need to be sure and do that. The Oscar.
Yes.
Hey, thank you.
I love it.
Okay, is there any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the Vernon Language Phase 2. This project is complete. The only thing we have pending left is the replanting of the tree. And along with that goes some electrical work that's supposed to be installed in there and the sprinkler system to water that tree. So they were about to plant the tree, but we decided to wait till October, which is just a better month to plant the tree. So in the meantime, the contractor has gotten the tree on the right was when the tree was inside, they were inside big black plastic containers and pots. It was taken a few months ago. And since we're not going to plant it, the contractor went to the nursery and planted it in the ground on the top left corner. That's the actual tree, but it's back in the ground and it'll be nursed there. Make sure it's growing fine. And then in October, we'll relocate it back to our school.
Looks great. Looks
That's
great.
the actual tree on the top left.
That's a big tree. I'm surprised they found one that big. That's great.
Yeah. That's great.
And that's the only thing pending on that project. So any questions there?
At some point, and we finished the interior work?
No.
No.
This is, yeah,
Yeah,
finished,
okay.
that was all exterior work and the tile
Yeah.
work and the ramps and all the landscaping, lighting. This now is a phase 3 that we awarded to Holcimon Construction.
Took it out.
They're doing the
Put it back
interior
today.
courtyard, some stairwell upgrades and
just
painting
been
work.
back in the
So
ground for a while.
they just got the permit and they're getting ready to start.
At the nursery.
They're doing the submittal process is getting the cut sheets to all the building materials to the architect to make sure they approve them so they can order the materials to make sure those are the materials that were spec'd. Many times they'll want to buy a product that's not allowed, and so then they'll waste time and money if they do that. So they get the architects to approve the paperwork that, yes, that's the right product, you can order it. So they're already starting that process, and I think we're just getting the building permit here in the next day or two, and they'll start demolition work.
By Christmas?
Well, we're gonna get this is a small project, so it's substantial completion by August. And then the final punch list probably won't be finished till September, but we'll work around the kids or after work or weekends, or after school or weekends. But the big work we want to do before school starts. So it's a very short timeline.
Yeah. I'm still thinking of that, I'm still thinking of that reunion, Greg.
The next project is the golf skill station. We finally got the screens in, and they've been put up.
Nice.
Picture. It goes from the low side, which is the right side, is where the kids stand and hit the ball. And of course, the left side is the taller area, and the balls have more room to get some height on the shots. And the groundwork, they put the Bermuda seed. It's already germinating, as you can see there. And closer look of the interior of that driving range. The floor is slanted back towards, I'm sorry, the floor is slanted away, so all the balls will roll to the back of the net, and then they'll be picked up there in one area. So it was designed that way as a good design feature. And we have the putting greens, and of course the grass is growing around there. And the fencing work is complete in the sidewalk. So that this project is pretty much, I think this is the last time you'll see it on the presentation. We're ready to close it out.
Oscar, so the driving range part is natural grass and the putting greens are artificial?
No, they're both artificial.
Both articles.
Oh, they're both artificial, okay.
The driving range and the putting green are artificial.
Okay.
It's the surrounding
Surrounding
grass
grass.
that's natural.
Okay. Looks really nice, wow.
The other next project is the elementary school multipurpose buildings, the wall panels. We've already completed Dishman, Houston, and Stewart Place. I presented those at the last meeting. We're now at Rodriguez Elementary, and they're starting the painting work. They got the floor covered. They're gonna paint the trusses and the deck. And this particular mini gym had 6 door openings on each side. And the metal was very thin on them, and there was gaps, so there was a lot of heat coming in. It was hard to keep that space cool. So we're closing 4 of the 6 openings, and we're insulating the remaining 2 so they can have a very good insulated envelope to keep the building very cool, and it'll help with the acoustics. So the principal's very excited about the changes we've made there. So this one should be done in the next month or so, maybe 3 weeks. Just another shot of the building. And they're also painting the ductwork. Any questions on the multipurpose building? If not, we'll move on to the big project, Early College High School UTRGV. The contracts have been signed and executed by both parties. Notice to proceed has been issued. So the contractor has mobilized and is starting work. We had a groundbreaking scheduled a couple of weeks ago, but we got rained out, so that'll have to be done in a future meeting or event. But basically, the contractor is, this is a shot from down the street, down the road. It's a far shot away, but you can see the construction trailer on the right-hand side and a lot of the equipment on site. And they already cleared the site of all the grass and the grub and roots and all the things, undesirable elements you don't want there. And they're starting to dig. There's gonna be a pad of a 4-foot depth. They're gonna dig down, fill it up with soil again, and then they'll mark the areas where they're going to drill the piers. And all that black fencing is required as part of the pollution prevention plan to reduce any contaminant runoffs off the site so you don't affect surrounding properties. That's required on every project. They've already done that. And so
Contaminants.
we're off starting, and right now the weather cleared up, so it's a good time to do foundational work. If you remember the Treasure Hills one, we got rained out the first 2 months and we couldn't do anything. So hopefully it stays a little bit dry here, and it allows a contractor to really advance the work.
So Oscar,
Any
what's
questions?
inside what's the inside the silt fence? That's where they dug up the base for the foundation, or what?
The entire construction site has to have a silt fence It's just part of an environmental control that if you have equipment and you have trucks and bulldozers or chemicals and cans, that if something leaks and leaches, it doesn't leach out into surrounding areas or into waterways, into ditches, irrigation canals. You can have antifreeze, you can have oils, you can have gas, diesel, different things leak in the site. And they have found out over the years that sometimes that can leach into waterways or into adjacent properties where the owners will complain that, hey, you're contaminating my site with all these chemicals. So it's required now for every construction project to have this kind of protection around it. So any leaks or contaminants are contained within your own property, and then you're required to clean it up.
Is that just because it's in conjunction with the university, or is that any commercial project?
This is any commercial project. You'll also have like bay hails or different kinds of products around any drain inlets to catch any contaminants going in there. So it's just something that's part of an occupational safety.
Okay, thank you.
The next project is this Transition Academy. Of course, we're
Bless you.
rebidding this project. And we've already advertised. A pre-bid meeting will be held July 9th for any potential bidders have any questions. And we'll get the proposals will be due July 21st, and then we'll rank them. We'll present it to the next facilities committee meeting on August 4th and hopefully award it on August 11th. And we've made some changes to the scope. We've taken some things out. Some bigger things have been taken out that we'll do ourselves, self-contracted through the district, which will also help save some money, and we've reduced some of the scope on like the sprinkler systems, fire alarm system, camera systems, technology piece. We'll do all that ourselves so that we don't have the markups from the contractor for general conditions, insurance, bonds, things like that. So we'll see some savings.
Excellent.
And the next project is with the Gutierrez Fine Arts Academy. We awarded to Spalglass at the last special call board meeting, phase 1, which is all the interior work that we want to try to finish before school starts, is the new curtain wall system for the dining hall at Gutierrez. All they had was that rolled down grate or fence or gate, but you could talk right through it and you'd see right through it, and the noise is, there's no protection from the noise into the main circulation or office area. And Vela and Memorial have that wall, so now Gutierrez will have that same wall with the door opening to create more privacy for the dining hall area. And we're going to do a window in the hallway for the new robotics room, laboratory, so as people are passing by, you can see what's going on in the room. And we also picked a room to have a dance floor. It's called the Marley System, or part of their fine arts program. And all that's projected to be done right before school starts. So we've issued the notice to proceed, and I believe they're just waiting for the permit. They just applied for it, so probably by the middle of next week, we should get that project started. The marquees, I had reported before that they had stopped work and then they resumed work. Well, they shut down again for about 3 weeks. And we just got an email today that they're gonna start tomorrow. I think they're closing down every time they have an issue with some employees or an employee whom they suspect may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. They shut down the whole company, they disinfect and send everybody home for 2-3 weeks. So it looks like they're past that phase again, and they're gonna start work tomorrow again. So this is one of those stop and start projects, and we're seeing that with vendors, companies out there that are small companies, and they decide to close and they're cautious with their employees. So just reporting that out, that it stopped, but it's back on tomorrow again.
May I ask a question, please? I'm sorry, perhaps
Yes.
I missed this somewhere along the way. Marquees district-wide, does that mean what does that mean we are doing?
If you look there in the middle of the slide where it says scope of work, we're doing signs at Zavala, Vernon, Gutierrez, Harlingen High School, and the Performing Arts Center. So there's 5 of them. We just said district-wide because there was multiple sites.
But my question, I guess, maybe it's obvious, Oscar, but my question is, are we working toward the goal that every campus will have a comparable marquee? I mean, is that what we're doing? Which is great, I think, but I'm just asking.
Well, so several schools had already done theirs through their PTAs and other
Right,
funding
they
sources.
pay for their own, that's correct. Mhm.
Right, so we're trying to get some other campuses that needed help on their digital
Sure.
marquees. And these are the ones that we picked. We can certainly plan to look at others in the future to see if we can get some more done.
I would think that if we have this many going in the district, that we might want to consider that as a goal.
Yeah, Ms. Fleury, we're looking and we're studying that because one of the things that we want to do is use the digital marquees when we have to send out a district-wide message, that it can easily be uploaded to all the marquees. And so we're actually looking at how we can use it for district-wide messaging versus just campus-specific messaging. So when it's all said and done, the ideal is to have everybody have a digital marquee. So that's a goal to where we're headed.
Yeah, that's excellent thinking, thank you.
Okay, the next project is the Kano Academy and STEM Academy portable buildings. We've already received them, they're on site. Kano received an additional double wide portable for 2 classrooms, and the STEM Academy received 2 doubles for a total of 4 classrooms. And they've been delivered to the site. You can see there at Kano, we had 2 doubles, we just added the 3rd one. And the company is anchoring them down, and we also ordered them with steps and ramps in certain places.
Already,
Yeah.
Our maintenance staff is going to be doing the electrical connection,
we got
the
plenty of
fire
room.
alarm, intercom, security, and our IT folks will be running the data lines over there. So they should be ready for the first day of school. And down on the bottom is another Kano with all the electrical work we're doing. And then this one is at STEM Academy. We set up 2. The doors are in the middle, so there'll be a ramp up to that big landing with a little covered area for the door entries. And those are in place also. And that's pretty much it. That's end of my presentation. I'll turn it over to Mr. Powers. So Mr. Powers, anything you want to add?
No, just, I'm just amazed at everything going so well. I'm just really happy about Treasure Hills and the way those classrooms turned out. I mean, they're better than I ever anticipated and just really nice. And Vernon looks great. Everything's just coming along super. And sounds like you're right on schedule with everything. So congratulations to your staff and everything y'all are doing.
Greg, I'm sorry, I guess I just have a lot of questions tonight because there's so much work going on. You're absolutely right. I would like to ask again about, if I might, please, on the portable buildings. You know, obviously, I can see STEM is. I mean, is this coming from a growth? Is this coming from expansion? Because there's a vast difference between Kano Academy, which is a well-established large building, and the STEM that we've just recently gotten into and might be an increasing program student-wise. So, I mean, I'm wondering about the portable buildings, and if I missed it, I apologize.
So I'll go ahead and respond to that. STEM Square Academy, STEM Square Prep Academy, it's because of growth. We had a
Okay.
small 8th grade class, and now as kids are progressing, it's growing. Eventually, I
Right.
predict that we'll outgrow that campus and we'll have to look for a long-term solution. When Kano was built, it was built with a certain number of classrooms. That green space where we're setting the portables was actually set aside in a master plan to add an additional 2-story wing there if needed. And so from the onset, Kano Academy, while it was very well built and designed, there were some teachers that did not have their own classroom. And so there were floating teachers from the onset when we opened the campus. Now looking more closely at pathways that lead to CT certifications and different pathways, then opening principal courses or beginning courses for a CT pathway. Teachers need their own location, and so they're currently being set in an area that's designed for future growth to add an additional two-story classroom wing at Kano. We're not there yet, but I foresee that in the future where we will have to put a classroom wing there, double two-story classroom.
That's great, thank
Yep.
you, good explanation, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Then we'll let Julio wrap it up for us, please. Mr. Cavazos?
Okay, let me share this with you. Can you all see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is our construction report as of the end of June 30th, 2020. Column B here, year 1 through 4, the budget of $50 million that we have put into the TRE projects. The year 5 of the budget in column C, another $10 million. So again, $16 million so far through 5 years to the end of June. We have spent $40.8 million, year 1 through 4, another 15.7 in year 5. So the total spent and committed, $56.3 million. So we have a estimate of about $3.3 million left, and some of that is going to be used for, again, early college, high school, and the Treasure Hills Phase 2. So that money is pretty much accounted for. Again, this is through the end of June 30th, 2020, at the end of our fiscal year. I'd be glad to answer any questions that the committee members might have.
Any questions, anyone? All right, if there are no questions in this meeting of the facilities,
Greg,
I'm sorry?
Greg, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
I was just wondering if maybe Julio, if you or Dr. Cavazos ever see the need. I don't know if you, I know you guys can remember this, but you know, back in the days where we had the bond and you know, and you know, you had so many projects ongoing. Y'all created a really nifty sort of timeline where you had on the, you know, on the y-axis, you had basically all the different projects, you know what I mean? And then you had like, you know, bars showing, and then you had on the x-axis, you had basically, you know, just the timeline on, and so we can kind of expect, you know, when are these projects going to be complete and that kind of stuff. And so you had like pre-planning and then construction and then whatever, you know, you had the different phases, but we could see, you know, and so it seems as if there may be a need to bring this back because kind of like so much work going on and stuff like that. But some of it's not construction, some of it's just renovations or whatever. And so I don't know if you think it could be helpful, or Greg, you know, if you think this will be helpful in the future to bring sort of that concept back, even for renovations, even for all our projects, to see that one snapshot of all the different things going on at the same time in the district, and when and how, you know, what, and so we can kind of tell the % completion of each project and things like that. And so if you think that makes sense, if it doesn't make sense, then that's fine, ignore what I
That's a
just
good
said. But I'm
idea.
just trying to
it's a
think,
one.
because we have a lot of stuff going on, and instead of talking about one, you know, we can talk about them individually, which is always helpful. The presentation that you did is awesome, I guess, but if we had like that one snapshot, that one picture of all the projects, and we can see all the timelines, I don't know if there's, if the board.
And I think that's something that Oscar and I can work on putting together some type of bar graph or line graph on the type of project and the estimated completion. I think that's something that Oscar has presented before in the past. Maybe, we can certainly work on that.
Well, I mean, only if Oscar and Greg and the board thinks it's going to be helpful. I don't know. I mean, but it's just a one pager. You can kind of see all the different things going on simultaneously, because Greg's right. I mean, Oscar juggles a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's nice to kind of see on one page all the things that are going on and that kind of stuff.
I think, Oscar, you have an ongoing spreadsheet to that. I think it's a great idea, especially when we do the facility committee reports at the regular board meeting, where we could show a one-pager of the things that we're tracking throughout the months. So
I think it's a great
I
idea.
brought that to Texas. This is a funny side story, but I brought that same concept to Texas Women's University when I was there, and they loved it, and it was the favorite. They would call it the Nolan slide. But anyway, it was really cool because on one slide you could kind of see everything going on in the campus, you know, that kind of stuff. And so
it's like a dashboard. It's like a
it'd be pretty
dashboard.
much impossible to do that at UT now. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Good idea.
I think it's a great idea. All right. Maybe, Oscar, we could implement that next time.
We'll work on it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or ideas? All right, going once, going twice. This meeting is adjourned.
We're still online, so we'll wait till we get the queue. Okay, we're offline. Thank you, guys. We'll start, Dr. Reiniger's gonna jump in here in a little bit. She just texted me, and we'll start at 5 o'clock.
All right, thank you.
That's good.
Where is she gonna be, down there?
She's gonna be online.
Oh,
Art,
Mr.
you're not gonna stop the meeting, so we can just stop video and mute, and then just click back on, right? You're not gonna
Correct.
shut it down?
Correct.
Hold on, Dr. Ranger. We're not picking up your audio. Can we get a test? Alicia, can you say something?
We can barely hear.
We lost audio in the speakers in the
Right.
boardroom.
We'll
Stand
slide
by.
it.
Okay.
We're gonna look at the
Dr. Alicia, can you say something?
Can you hear me, Shane?
Yes. Okay. Now we can hear you. Okay, Dr. Reininger, just go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, Jessica, go ahead and let us know when we're live. Okay, Dr. Reininger, we are live. You're ready to go.
Okay, great. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Transforming Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. And this meeting was posted and is following is pursuant to Governor Abbott's temporary suspension of open meeting laws. And we're looking forward to the topics tonight. We do have the necessary people here, so we are able to move forward. And we're going to start the meeting today with Dr. Alicia Nayola talking about Pathway to Reopening 2020-2021.
Thank you, Dr. Reiniger, Dr. Palacios, board members, senior administration, and audience. So earlier last week, we had shared that we wanted to spend some time today talking about our pathway to reopening as we look to the fall school year, the 2020-21 school year. As you know, we put out a document last week outlining some of the processes that we were looking at as we reopen schools in the fall. Particularly in that pathway to reopening document, we spent some time sharing with our families two big topics. One being, what would academic instruction look like in the fall? And then as well as talking about health and safety protocols that we were looking to institute as we start to bring students back into our school system. And so that pathway to reopening document was designed to give our communities an overview, maybe not full detail, because ultimately, as we identify data regarding the number of students that we will have coming back into our school system, that will drive some of the decision making going forward. But in essence, it gave our community what were those highlights of health and safety protocols we would be instituting, and what would instruction look like, not just in our traditional face-to-face programming, but what would it look like for our students that would be choosing to return to school remotely. And so in our document today, we're going to spend a little bit of time recapping some of that, but more so focusing on what are the things that are going on moving forward between now and August 10th when we reopen schools. So as I mentioned, there were two key aspects of our pathway to reopening and our processes. So we are looking, one, at academic instruction, as I mentioned, health and safety protocols. So we'll talk about those in a little bit. But I want to focus on academic instruction. And so in the document that we shared with our community, we asked our families to make a selection regarding what type of instruction they were looking towards in the fall with their children. We know that we're at the beginning of July and we're still a month and a half, give or take, away from August 10th. However, obviously, any kind of changes to our processes is going to require a certain degree of planning. And so we asked our families to select what option they were interested in for their children. We took the opportunity within our Pathway to Reopening document to give our families a little bit more explanation about what face-to-face instruction was going to look like, what remote instruction within a synchronous and asynchronous method would look like. And we also identified a hybrid model for our families to consider. And so we did note in our document that as of the date that we put that document out, that hybrid was not an option. We were petitioning the state to consider allowing us to offer a hybrid being a combination of face-to-face and remote. In the document, we did say we were interested in hybrid, at least at our junior and senior level. And so that discussion is still going on at the state level. We're hoping to hear soon whether hybrid will be an option. But as always, we try and plan ahead. And so we've been having a lot of discussion regarding if the state allows us to offer a hybrid model, what would it look like in our school district? Could it possibly be alternating school days as an option? If hybrid came into play, at what point would we bring our hybrid students into the school system? Obviously, there's a lot of planning, and in light of what we are experiencing just across our state and across our county with number of COVID cases, we want to make sure that as we implement any of these processes, that we are doing so responsibly and that we're taking into consideration the health and safety of our students and staff. So we're still working through a hybrid model and what that could look like. So we're looking at a number of options, and so we're certainly hopeful that the state chooses to allow that. I think the more options that families have, the better able we are to meet their needs. And so we'll continue to look at what those options look like. I will tell you that as of today, we've had close to 8,000 responses from our families. When we look at that, what percentage breakdown looks like between face-to-face and remote, right now we have about 63% of our families that have responded opting for a remote option, and then about 37% that are interested in continuing to come back into the schools at a 37% rate. We still have some time till tomorrow to receive some additional forms. Once we have those results, we'll go ahead and calibrate that information, share it out with our campuses. All of our school administrators are returning next week. So a big part of what their work will be to identify our other 10,000 plus students and helping guide them and give them information in order so that they can make an informed decision with regard to what pathway they will choose. So all of that data is critical, because knowing exactly what our numbers look like will really guide a big portion of our planning. And so as we work ourselves through this presentation, you'll realize just how critical those numbers are as we plan ahead for the fall semester. So the second item, and so as you know, as we're working through this academic instruction, what I call a bucket, just a bucket of items within academic instruction that we need to make sure that we have in place so that we can have that successful opening that we're all looking forward to. There's a number of things that we need to take into consideration. So aside from knowing what learning pathways children are going to be returning to our school in, we also have to think about our academic calendar. And so every indication is that depending on how these COVID numbers move forward, there could be some potential closures in the future. And so we want to be prepared for that. And so part of what we have to do is look at our academic calendar, and should there be a need for us to have any kind of closure, how would our calendar be impacted? And so what are some adjustments that we may have to make in order to be prepared for that? The next item that you'll see there is dealing with state testing windows. And so the state has been very clear in indicating that the accountability system next year will not go away and that we will have testing happening. And so Dalia Garcia, through her department, is working on identifying those testing windows. The state has made some adjustments to the testing windows, saying that we will be able to test into June. And so Dalia Garcia is working on that and identifying what's the best process to give our students every opportunity to demonstrate where they are at with regard to state assessments. We are also looking at what does a standardized school supply list look like. Every year we have a school supplies list that our campuses put out, but obviously this is going to be a unique year when we think about the fact that we will have some students returning face-to-face, but obviously as we look at our percentages, we'll also have students that are learning from home. So what become the appropriate school supply list for those students? And in some cases, the supplies may be a little bit different, just designed to address whatever that learning environment is going to be. And so we are working with our elementary and secondary school principals to identify and their staff to identify what those supply lists will be. with as many students as we have that have replied that they are interested in and going through a remote learning option, one of the things that we obviously learned when we went into school closure was that we really needed to look at the connectivity issues that our students were going through. And so our technology department has been spending a lot of time focused in that arena. And so one of the areas that they are working through, the connectivity plan that we have developed for next year, is the idea behind a park and learn. And so we call it a park and learn because our schools will be equipped in order for our families, if they need to have some type of internet access, for them to be able to come and park in our parking lots and be able to access the internet via that route. And so we have our folks that are working on how do we increase that connectivity level at each of our campuses in order to give our families that opportunity. The other way that we're also looking at providing increased connectivity is the idea behind mobile units, where we actually have units that will go into those areas where we've already identified there are connectivity issues, and be able to provide that kind of access. So almost like an internet on wheels, where we could equip our buses with internet access and go into certain neighborhoods, and families can still be able to access internet. We call them connectivity routes as opposed to bus routes, but just these connectivity routes where we let our families know we're going to be in these particular areas, so that should a student be working from home remotely, then they're able to download whatever assignments and work that needs to be done in order to be able to get them connected to instruction. The other item that we're also working within our connectivity plan, obviously the state has brought forward the concept of synchronous instruction, and so in order for synchronous instruction to happen, our teachers at the campus need to be able to work remotely with students. And so we are evaluating what our broadband capabilities are at each campus to ensure that our teachers across the campus are able to do simultaneous instruction and not weigh down the broadband capabilities at each campus. And so big shout out to our technology department. They really have done a lot of work in this arena. And so we feel like even with the larger number of students opting for remote instruction right now, that we're in a position to be able to meet their needs. Another lesson learned as we were going through the spring implementation was that our teachers had to use their own personal cell phones and telephone devices to communicate with students. And so, we appreciated all their own willingness to do that, but we also know that we need to support them in that arena. And so we are identifying communication systems that will allow teachers to still maintain that type of contact and connection with our students without necessarily using their own cell phones, their own landlines at home, having to give out phone numbers and so forth. And so our technology department is also looking at that. And so we're at a point where we're close to identifying what that system will be that our teachers will be able to use in those types of settings. One of the things that we started working on last spring as we went into remote teaching and learning was providing guidance to our staff on what does remote teaching and learning look like, the logistical aspects, not so much the instructional, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but more of the logistical. How do you take attendance? How all the things that are critical that still need to be accomplished with students, even if they are learning remotely. And so we will have staff handbooks ready to go first day of school for our staff on how you work through all of the logistical pieces that are now expectations of the state. I think the state was a little bit more flexible in the spring. As we begin the fall semester, they are now bringing back a lot of the original requirements that were in place. And so we need to be ready to comply with those expectations. And so we're working to ensure our teachers are prepared. Probably the biggest work that we have done this summer has come in the instructional reset. So under Veronica Cortan, Lori Romero, and Joseph Villarreal, they have really spent a lot of time in redesigning what does instruction look like. not just instruction in a face-to-face format, but just instruction as a whole, whether that be remote or face-to-face, identifying what does true rigorous instruction look like, even in a remote setting that still promotes communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. And so just some really exciting work that is happening there. I think that the instruction that our students are going to be receiving as they work remotely is going to be nothing even close to what they experienced in the spring. So certainly a big shout out to all those people that have been instrumental in recreating the curriculum in HCISD. And then one of the items that we just have to be prepared for is that with the increase in cases across the county, across the state, no doubt we will experience situations where our employees where we will have confirmed cases. And so what are our processes for returning people to work? And so what does that decision making look like? What are all those aspects that we take into consideration? And so our human services has been working through those processes to ensure that we are making the best decisions for our districts, our district, our staff, and our students. So a lot of work that is going on in our human services department in this arena. And so these are just a few items, but every department across our district is having some degree of impact within the work that is happening as we get ready for fall. Obviously, this is the instructional side, but the other big side that we continue to want to reassure our parents around is what those health and safety protocols are going to be that we will implement for our students and staff as they return in the fall. And so one of the items that continues to be a recurring piece that we hear from CDC, we hear from all entities, is the importance of sanitation and disinfection. One of the lessons that we learned this summer as we were doing our summer programming, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to bring our students in to truly implement these protocols and know what that would look like. It's one thing to write up a plan, it's another one to actually put it in place and work it through and iron out kinks and figure out all of those pitfalls that are potential. And so we had an opportunity to work through all of that. And so a lot of these health and safety protocols that you will see here were many that we used during the summer as we sat with all of our coordinators that ran summer programming and kind of debriefed on, what worked, what didn't work. Everything that you see on here, the general feedback from all of them was that these were all health and safety protocols that we could continue to implement in the fall, that they were doable even with increased numbers. And so that was a big learning experience from that process. So in the disinfection, we had our custodial staff on a schedule of disinfection in our hallways, whether that was our restrooms, our door handles, all of the things that were high touch areas. They were on a schedule, so we knew and custodians knew when these things had to happen as opposed to leaving those to chance. And so that was a pretty reassuring piece to our staff that was working, that they actually were seeing people doing these pieces. And in addition, we also got, I think I had shared with you all earlier on when we were planning what summer and fall was going to look like, that we were going to purchase some disinfecting sprayers, some sanitizing sprayers that you could use in a classroom, and they were electrostatic, which means that when the droplets land on whatever surface, they stay there. They don't float into the air. They actually adhere to surfaces. And so we actually, it looks kind of, it's an interesting little gadget. But we got those in, and so we will have those available at all of our campuses. It's certainly going to speed up the process for our custodial staff to be able to disinfect bigger areas in a faster amount of time. And so that'll always be a great thing, because that'll ensure that as we start every morning, every classroom in our schools has been disinfected and sanitized for our students. The other item on air quality upgrades, and I gotta send a shout out to Ken Lee. When we first started having the discussions about health and safety protocols prior to COVID really arriving in the valley, one of the things that we talked about was air quality and the importance of air quality in all of our classrooms. One of the things that they already do is they use the highest grade of filters across our district, across every classroom, every campus, and those are changed every month. But one of the things we talked about was how do we enhance that? And so one of the things that that Ken went out and found was an actual disinfectant that sprayed on the coils of the air conditioning system. So while the filters will filter out pollutants, what this will do is you spray this disinfectant on the coils, and so it keeps those coils disinfected so that the air that is constantly being circulated is in fact purified to a greater degree. And so they have continued to use that. They do that on a regular cycle to our air conditioning systems. And so we're hopeful that between the combination of just using the highest quality filters and this disinfecting solution in our air conditioning system, that we will provide certainly a much cleaner and purified air for our students. The other item that we implemented this summer and we will move forward in the fall is doing screening and temperature checks for our students and staff. We did those in the summer and we weren't quite sure what that would look like. Could we accommodate numbers and things of that nature? So one of the key pieces for us was when we used these processes with our strength and conditioning students. We had over 200 students that were coming to that program, and so our coaches were very easily able to do the screenings and temperature checks for our students. So we feel confident that that will be something that we will be able to do in the fall at our campuses. So our principals will start working through that process of how do we prepare for that. The other piece that's sometimes a concern, because one of the big focuses was to limit any type of congregation. And so when students are arriving or leaving at school, those are some of the biggest times where we potentially could see degrees of congregation. So we've been going through these planning processes of what will drop off and dismissal look like. So as we talk about drop-offs, we're having discussions on whether we stagger drop-offs or we also identify multiple entry points. So the students are not just coming in through one door, but they can enter through multiple entry points, and thus you minimize the degree of congregation that can happen when you work off of singular entrances. And so we feel that will assist us in minimizing that congregation. And in the morning, one of the great pieces is that parents don't drop off all their children all at 8 o'clock or 8:45, whatever time we're starting school. They tend to drop off over an extended period of time. So it's rare that we have huge numbers arriving at the same time. So we think that the early drop-offs will not be an issue with congregation. We are having discussions with the principals about dismissal because campuses dismiss all at the same time. And so we are looking at staggered dismissals that will allow students to dismiss a group at a time so that we don't have large numbers congregating after school. Hand sanitizers, we were fortunate that very early on we were thinking already about sanitizers and hand washing and so forth. So we very early on put in our orders for hand sanitizer, and so and in fact we are scheduled to receive an order from the state as well. They are also assisting districts in providing additional hand sanitizers. So we are very comfortable that we have more than enough hand sanitizer to put in every classroom and in our hallways on hand sanitizing stations, so that students don't have to go out and buy that. There used to be a time when we used to ask kids to bring those. That is not something that our students will need to do. We're very confident that we have the appropriate supplies. More importantly, CDC talks about the importance of hand washing, and that's really one of our big focuses when we think about how do we protect the health and safety of our students. And so One of the big emphasis this coming year will be on the importance of hand washing. And so at the very beginning of the year, that's going to be the first day of school training and really working through how do we create those supervised hand washings. But most of our hand washings tend to happen in our restrooms. That's where we have our sinks. And so we knew that that could not be the sole place where we had opportunities for students to hand wash. And so we have actually purchased hand washing stations, and I'll share what those look like for you. But those are freestanding hand washing stations. They're portable. You can put them just about anywhere. Whether that's when kids are coming in from PE or after lunch, we can put those just about anywhere where it doesn't make us dependent on restrooms as the location for students to hand wash. The other thing that we thought of very early on was the water fountains. So some water fountains, depending on water pressure, students may have to get very close to that spigot. And so ultimately we felt that that was not something that we wanted to chance for our students or our staff. And so what we're actually going to do in the fall is we've been working with our child nutrition department, and so they are actually going to provide water bottles to every student in the district. And so we will also have water bottle refill stations throughout the campus, allowing students to be able to fill their water bottles and not have to use those traditional water fountains. The other big piece that's important to us as we look and we continue to hear from CDC, and I think one of the biggest ones is the social distancing. And that just has become one of the most critical protocols just nationwide as we look at how do we address COVID-19. And so the one thing that we are not going to negotiate is social distancing across our campuses. And so whether that's social distancing in our classrooms and how we sit students, whether that's social distancing in our lunchrooms, whether that's in our PE, whether that's in our hallway, that will be a consistent protocol. Now, a lot of our programs are going to be dependent on what our numbers look like. Our staffing will be guided by that, but our goal is to ensure that our students are social distancing wherever they may be. The other item that we had already made a decision on, certainly the governor put out his executive order requiring masks at all locations, and that executive order will also apply to schools. But we had already made a decision that this was going to be that other critical factor as we consider the health and safety of our students and staff. And so absent of the governor's executive order, we will continue to require masks for all students and staff. One of the questions that we sometimes get is, what about the little ones? Our pre-K, 1, 2s, the babies, and will they be able to handle masks? And so we've made some adjustments to that. So we are actually going to look at a combination of masks and face shields. We were fortunate that we did receive some from the state, and we have purchased some for our little ones. In fact, they just brought me one, so I don't know if y'all can see, but this is a little child's face shield. And so these are the ones that we are looking at for our babies. We've been working with what's the best tool or personal protective equipment for our students, and we think for our little ones, this is a more appropriate item than necessarily masks. And so it's trying to make sure that we're making decisions that are age appropriate. Same thing, that we sometimes get questions about, well, are they going to be required to wear them all day? Can a third grader really work with a mask all day long? And so no, we're cognizant of that, and so our staff will build in those mask breaks. And so what does a mask break look like? It means that we go outside and we give kids an opportunity to not have to wear those masks. And obviously lunch and certain areas, those are going to be situations. But whether they have their masks on or not, the other factor that's always going to underscore everything is that social distancing. So whether they have their masks on or off, the social distancing is going to be in place for students. And so that I think we're confident that between those two pieces, those are going to be some of our more critical ones. The other one that we have instituted, especially at the elementary level. So at the elementary level, prior to this year, we did have some departmentalization where students at the elementary level, especially at the upper grades, would switch classes. Part of that was in preparation for what was coming with secondary. But as we go into this school year, one of the decisions that we have made is that our element that we are looking at with health and safety protocols, but there's just so many others. You know, we've had conversations about our transportation, because we do have STEM students that are going to be coming face-to-face who will have the need to ride the bus. And so we have we're working on establishing the protocols for buses, and so we're looking at things like assigned seating and then families sitting together as opposed to necessarily separating every single student, but keeping the family groupings together as much as possible, so that again we're instituting health and safety protocols that make sense, but that still also are at a high enough standard that we're protecting the health and safety of our students. I will tell you, we've gotten a lot of guidance from the state throughout this process. A lot of the health and safety protocols that you see here were ones that were recommended but not necessarily required. And so we made the decision that the health and safety of our students was just going to be held at a higher standard. And so while some of these are not required by the state, many of these I would say are not required by the state, we just felt that they were important and critical for our students. So I want to give you a little bit, these last few slides that I'm going to share are just kind of like a show and tell. So these are the masks that we have ordered for our students and our staff. And so these are our cloth masks. We wanted to certainly highlight our school district. And so every student and staff member will receive 2 masks, and ultimately we have more certainly that we'll distribute those. But we wanted them to have something that we are providing. We know that that's not always a possibility considering the economic times that we are in, and so we wanted to make sure that we were providing masks to everybody that works in our school district and attends our schools. One of the things that we're also looking at is how do we help our little ones understand what social distancing and 6 feet apart looks like. Our older ones understand 6 feet better, but our little ones may not always understand what 6 feet looks like. And so we are ordering floor decals for all of our elementaries and for some of our secondaries whenever they're needing to create that 6 foot distancing piece. But through these decals that we'll have at our elementaries, we're hoping that our little ones will learn just that concept of 6 feet and maintaining that social distancing. On your right-hand side, you see some of the window decals that we will be putting out across our school district, basically identifying that we are requiring face coverings throughout all of our facilities. The item that you see before you here is an easel that will be located at the front of all of our buildings. This one happens to say mask recommended because during the summer, there were some facilities that we had where at that point it was a recommendation. Obviously, as we move into the fall, we've established that those will be required. And so these are just some reminders and guidance to people that are accessing our facilities. What you have in front of me, I think, Shane, we've had a story that was done in the paper on these. These are the water stations. So right now, this one happens to be next to a water fountain because of the water source. But you'll see there's a foot pedal at the bottom so that students aren't having to touch or turn on anything. The student steps foot on that, and so obviously they're able to wash their hands through that. And then the soap will be provided alongside that. Here are the water bottle stations, and so these are being put across our school district, and so these will allow, whether it's the water bottle, and this one you happen to see a cup there for our staff members,
No,
but
not
so
stainless steel. It's
these
gonna be
water
water bottle.
stations will be placed strategically across our campuses in order to give our students that opportunity to refill their water bottles. And so that concludes the bigger portion of the presentation. I'm going to move it to discussions and questions, but I did want to take an opportunity to highlight for you all our frequently asked questions page. When we created our Pathway to Reopening document, we spent a lot of time working through our head, what are some possible questions that families may have? And so we put all of those possible questions through the verbiage in our document. However, we were still getting some of the questions that we anticipated, but may have been missed by our community. And so at that point, we wanted to make sure that we gave people the opportunity to work through the document. In the document, we did ask them to email us with any questions that they may have, because our goal was that once we started receiving those questions, we would stand up a frequently asked document. We didn't want to tell them, here's a frequently asked document, without questions that were really suitable to what they wanted to know. And so we finally had enough questions to compile, and so we identified a frequently asked page, so it's www.hcisd.org, PTR, Pathway to Reopening _FAQ. And so what you have on this page,
You'll have to
we
close
do
out the
have it in
PowerPoint and open
Spanish.
it up again.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but the little thing keeps popping up at the top.
You have to stop sharing and then open up the window.
Let me see, there we go. So you'll see here, we had questions regarding academic instruction, and so there's a number of questions here. These were some of the most popular ones that we tended to see. One of the other things that we did is we asked all of our PTA presidents, we brought together our city council PTA, and we asked them to formulate for us as well, what are some potential questions that families may have. And so what you'll find in that document, and I'm not sure what happened, you'll find in that document those questions as well. And so you'll see a number of them there, some talking about what about participating in a hybrid program, so no different than what I shared with you, that is in the works. We had some questions about special needs students. Some were very specific. So we still have some questions that we responded to individually because they were very specific. These were more of the general types of questions. For some of those specific questions, either we were able to give them an immediate answer, or we referred them to work with their campus to identify how best to address that particular question. And then the other types of questions fell within the health and safety arena, where we're getting questions about what does class size look like, what are we doing to ensure the health and safety of students, visitors, what would lunch and PE settings look like, things of that nature. And so we'll continue to update this page for our families regardless as we move forward. And so that will conclude my portion of the presentation. I'll certainly welcome any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Dr. Noyola.
Madam Chairman, I have a couple of questions.
Please, yes.
I think all of us probably have a few questions.
Sure.
I've got quite a few, so I'll limit mine and then I'll yield it to my colleagues and everyone else. And if I don't hear some of the responses from my questions, then I guess I'll go back and continue it. First of all, the presentation was fantastic. Great job, Alicia, on going through the details on each and every single one of what you're talking about. I don't have any questions at all on the health and safety protocols. I think you hit a home run. I think we're doing everything worldly possible to make sure that when the kids come to class, they're going to be safe. If the teachers come to class, they're going to be safe. I do have some questions on state testing. On the state testing, so I'm assuming that we're still going to be offering all the core courses. Is that correct? Or
That
are
is
we going to be
correct.
doing some English and math? Or it's business as usual?
That is correct. All of our academic core courses will continue to be offered. One of the things that we are evaluating is more along the lines of elective courses, because not every course lends itself to remote instruction, in particular as we think about courses like CTE, and some of those just do not lend themselves. But the core courses are non-negotiable. Those will be, every student will have to take those.
Okay, great. I guess my next question is, kind of at the beginning of the presentation, you had remote, you had hybrid, and you had face-to-face. As we're moving forward on this, some of the percentage that you said was 30% so far was face-to-face. Over 60% is some form of hybrid or remote. That's kind of a little scary because that's just going to make our job a little harder, because that 30 can turn down to 17 to 16, depending if the virus gets a little worse. But I guess my question is, as we're doing that, are we looking at what teachers can offer what courses? Because there are some teachers that are and for lack of better words, and trying to be as careful with my words, but there are some teachers that have more years than others. Is there going to be some preferences on some teachers not having to do the face-to-face because of their age, because they have a history of illness, because maybe they have the chronic issues that are going on? Are we as a district looking at that when we start telling teachers and we start assigning responsibilities in classrooms? How are we handling all that, and how are we working on that?
Sure. So one of the things that we spent a lot of time on this summer was, one, in the training and making sure that our teachers were prepared to deliver remote instruction. But coming back to your question, so every teacher should be in a position to be able to deliver remote instruction. Some may be further along than others. And so sometimes, we're going to have to be also strategic in how we identify which teachers will teach remote and which ones will teach face-to-face, because we have to continue to ensure the strong instruction for our students regardless of where they are sitting. But we anticipate that we will have staff that will have reservations about returning to school and whether they will be sitting in front of students in a classroom. Within a hybrid, we will have between face-to-face and hybrid, that's going to be a combined number. As far as where teachers will wind up, one of the things that we're getting ready to do, Mr. De Leon, is survey our staff and kind of find out and identify who are those staff that do have reservations with regard to returning to work because they may have some underlying condition, whatever the situation may be. Now, every case is unique. And so once we have the staff that has identified whatever their concern may be, we're going to have them work directly with our human services, because we can't blanket for people. And so human services, we went through some of that when we brought our staff back. I'm talking about teachers, but I'm talking about our central office staff, our maintenance staff, when we returned people to work in the summer. And so human services worked with each person individually who had some type of situation, worked with them on options. Sometimes there were some accommodations that could be made. Sometimes it just wasn't possible for whatever the reason may be. But our goal is that we don't just expect to have our staff back and not take those things into consideration. But we are going to request that information from them and then have them work directly with human services on what the particulars around that situation may be. And then wherever we are able to accommodate and not compromise the instruction of our students, then certainly we're going to do everything we can to support them.
So,
Madam Chair, I have one last question, then I'll yield to the rest of the board.
Please.
What happens if and I don't know if I guess this is to you, Alicia, or well, I'll address it to you. What happens if a child gives the COVID virus to the teacher, and the teacher has to be quarantined for 14 days or maybe longer, does that individual at that point in time can they claim workman's comp, or do they take their sick, or is that a special circumstance? How's that going to work?
So, Debbie is with us, and so I'll give you a brief information on that, and then I'll turn it over to her. That certainly is her arena. But we do have the federal leave that's been made available to our staff, and so Deb, anytime we have that kind of situation where we have a staff member that identifies as having been confirmed or is displaying symptoms, whatever that may be, they are referred to Debbie, and then she guides them through the process. We have thought about that fact as we look at the fall, because now I have the teacher that's gone. They may be ill enough that they can't deliver instruction. And so one of the things that Veronica Corton is working on alongside Deb is the identification of substitute staff that is being trained alongside our teachers, so that if we have to bring an individual in to teach in that class, that substitute teacher has gone through the training that the rest of our staff has gone through on the instructional reset. But I'll turn it over to Deb. Deb, I don't know if there's something additional that you want to speak to on that, on what would happen in that type of situation.
Thank you, Dr. Noyola, and good afternoon, everyone. And so exactly as Dr. Noyola mentioned, we have been working with our employees as they have been returning to the school district, and should they be faced with a COVID-related situation, because of the federal Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act that went into effect April the 1st and expires December the 31st, we have been able to work with our employees in offering them this type of paid sick leave if it's a COVID-related situation that they are faced with. And so all employees are eligible for the 10 days. After that, should they still be faced with a situation, then there are options for the employees where if they have their own leave available, they have state personal leave or sick days available, then they may certainly take those days as well. If they've exhausted all of their leave, then part of that federal emergency leave will qualify them for partial payment. And so we have been working with our employees, and of course we're going to exhaust all options before we ever get to a doc. There is, definitely options available. To date, we've not had our employees that are having to face docs and pay, because we have these, leave options available, and our employees are able to take the leave that they're needing so that they can care for themselves or their loved ones that are faced with a COVID-related situation. So we'll continue to work with our employees and offer them the options that are best for them and their families.
Yeah, Deb, and thank you for that information, and something just to consider, and maybe for the board to consider as well with the superintendent and the administrative team is, I'd hate for any teacher that, talk about, essential employees. You talk about the firefighters, you talk about police officers. Right now in this COVID, as the school districts are opening up, our teachers are our first responders. And so what I would hate is they're putting themselves, their love for the child and their love for their profession and position is going back to work. What I would hate is if someone, God forbid, one or two of them get ill, and that is a great possibility, unfortunately, I'd hate for them to just have the 10 days and then they're going to, if they don't have any sick, they're going to dock and they're going to lose some of their salary. So it's something that maybe later on we could discuss, and we can go into details on maybe some strategies, so a teacher doesn't, it doesn't have to be docked for a week or a week and a half if they're sick more than the 10 days. Especially when you see teachers that they're single parents and they're the head of their own household. But again, thank you for that information. I appreciate it. And Dr. Reiniger, thank you very much for being patient. I'll go ahead and yield it to the rest of the board. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, sir. Other trustees have questions, please.
Yeah, Dr. Reiniger?
Yes, sir.
So question I had is, if there's folks participating from other districts, students from that were previously at other districts or have another home district, I understand that we won't get any funding if they're participating in any online remote instruction. Is that correct? And then, so does that mean that they have to actually change, right? Districts, they have to actually consider themselves now as Harlingen as their home district, and if they want to attend any remote learning opportunity with HCISD before we get any sort of funding for that student. Is that correct?
Correct, Dr. Bettis. They can't be enrolled in 2 districts at once. And so the only way that we receive funding is when the student is actually enrolled in our district. And so they would have to go through that process, because then we would submit them as students of our district to the state, and then the compensation starts to happen that way.
All right. Well, I mean, this is obviously very much a fluid situation, and I applaud y'all for the great work you're doing. It's not easy right now, and everybody wants to be out there first and communicate their plan first and that kind of stuff, which is not necessarily the smartest thing to do with everything being in flux. There's a lot of movement, and there's a lot of life is dynamic, and this virus is obviously has a course of its own, and the numbers are going up, and this, that, the other. We don't know when they're going to come down, and so I think we just have to make sure we keep communicating with the community. What are the different options? What are they going to look like? But just explain to them that this is not something that we can decide right now. The beginning of the school year, if it doesn't change, it may change. But the beginning of the school year right now, it's just too far away for us to say, this is exactly what we're going to do. And I mean, I think that a lot of people just need to know that, just to be patient and that kind of stuff. It doesn't help that, let's be honest. I mean, nobody's come out and said nationally, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, nationally or from the state, that, public schools are essential, that we're going to, and maybe they have, or maybe I just haven't heard it, but I think sometimes people need to realize that education is essential. We have to figure out a way to do this, and it's essential for a variety of reasons. Number one, the education of our students must go on, but also, it provides an opportunity for a lot of people to work and stuff like that, because, they have to have their kids, in schools. And so it's a very complex situation. The points that Javier made were very important. We don't want to, we don't want to get our staff sick, right? So we have to, all the precautions you outlined, in your beautiful presentation. Obviously, if we do those things right, if we screen appropriately, if we have the right hygiene, if we have the right sanitation, if we have all the face masks and all the hand washing, if we do the right things, distancing, then we should be okay. But we don't necessarily want to go out of our way to, to get especially our most vulnerable of our staff and teachers sick. But by the same token, if we are saying, okay, the young ones are fine, let them be face to face, and some of the teachers that are whatever beyond a certain age or so many years in the district, they're okay to be. I mean, that won't work either, because sometimes your best people for your remote learning, you have to kind of like give preference to sort of the quality of the education. I think that should be the deciding factor. We want the best education possible for our students, and so those folks that are most talented with the remote instruction should be allowed to do that, and should be actually promoted to do that, and then help teach others best practices of how to improve upon their remote instruction, because this is the way of the future. It's not changing, and I think that we need to embrace that. So we've got to be real careful, and not just, we've got to be very nimble, very flexible, and I just applaud y'all for all the thoughtfulness of the plans that you're coming up with, and we still don't know whether hybrid will be even funded model from the state. I hope it will be, but we still don't know that yet, as you outlined. And so, but we have, but there are other districts out there that are coming out and saying, this is what we're going to do. I guess they're just not going to get paid for it. That's fine, but we just don't know. And I think we just have to find out more from the state, and then kind of, and kind of go with that. But the more we can more frequently communicate with whatever we can communicate, even though it's uncertainty or options, and this is what it could look like, but we don't know. I guess folks are wanting to kind of find out, even though it's really far out. they kind of want to know what's going on. So, and I know y'all are doing that, but just I wanted to applaud y'all for the incredible amount of work that goes into this, because this is not easy. And I know y'all are doing the best job you can. Y'all don't get enough praise for the work you do. So just wanted to thank you, and that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Pettis. I know that Mr. Strubhart is going to give us an update on the communication plan for the reopening, part of a theme that we hear. But I do want to make sure there aren't any other questions on this first presentation, and I do recognize we're getting close to 6 o'clock as well. So,
Dr. Reiniger, I had a question.
Dr. Moniz.
Okay, yeah, just great presentation, Dr. Neola, very thorough, as usual. Wouldn't expect anything less from you. My question, I got a couple of questions, but regarding the polling, can that be duplicated? So is somebody screening that information? And what percentage of our families have replied?
Okay, so we, so you're talking about the response rate?
Yes. What is the percentage response rate?
So 8,000 out of 18,000?
Well, that's 8,000 families out of 18,000 kids, so.
Well, correct. 8,000 students that have been accounted for out of the 18,000. And so our goal is that once we return to school next week, that's part of what the work will be of our campuses, is identifying where are the other 10,000 students and what is their plan going to be.
Right, so even if it's at 10,000, we're saying we got 30%, we're planning for 30%, but 10,000, that's a huge number.
And so as we planned, we also, when we went through this process, we said that whoever didn't respond, in essence, we need to think of them as face-to-face students, right? Because we need to plan for what those bodies will look like. However, we're also going to work through this process of making the phone calls and making the outreach to try and get as close to a final number as possible. And so that will be much of the work of what will happen next week with our remaining students.
So theoretically speaking, if 10,000 people show up, can we accommodate that with 6 feet social distancing?
So one of the things that we did prior to us even getting at this point, we actually did evaluations of all of our campuses and classrooms. And we did an evaluation based on, could we accommodate 50% of the students? Could we accommodate 60% of the students? Could we accommodate 70% of the students? And so we have that information to guide us. For the most part, 70% is doable. It starts to, we start to have multiple issues once we start moving into that 80% or so, but anything in that 50 and 60 is for sure. 70, we start having to make some necessary adjustments, but it's doable. It's once we get into that 80 and 90 that we wind up possibly having issues there. But I think that the process is doable, even more so if the state is able to accommodate a hybrid option.
Elisa, to tap on to Bobby's question, out of the 30%, and let's just assume that we do get the response from the additional 10,000, it still may end up still being 30%.
Sure.
So if it's that 30%, regardless when we get the results from everyone, is that 30%, 75% of that 30% elementary, or is it who out of that 30%? Is it more of the elementary kids that the parents are responding on, or is it the middle school or the high school?
No, I don't have that specific answer, but I will tell you that we were getting response from all across the district, all campuses. So it wasn't, we had, at the outset, we had thought maybe we're going to get more response from this grade level than this other. Now we are seeing that a little bit more of the face-to-face is coming from the high school portion, and I think that's we kind of anticipated that we would have more of a face-to-face response rate at the high schools because students participate in activities and, there's other social implications there that sometimes guide kids. Here we go. I think we have,
This was a couple of days ago.
Shane popping that up.
This was a couple of days
But
ago.
you'll see that if you look on your left-hand side where you have the face-to-face, you'll see that our highest percentage rate was at the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. You have 43% of the seniors, 46% of freshmen. So your highest numbers of face-to-face are coming at the high school level, but the percentages for the most part under high school are staying in the mid to high 30s.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Good questions.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
think over that, well, for some reason I got pushed out of the conference. I'm glad I got back in. Also, regarding communication, which what Dr. Pettis was saying, I totally agree with that. We just got to make sure, even if we don't have information, I think we've done that. Kudos to Shane and his department for communicating. Even though people sometimes can't find the information, I know you're doing it, Shane, and your team is doing a great job of putting out that information. Even if we just got to repeat it, and with my experience, you got to email it, you got to text it, you got to call them. It's like so many different avenues that you got to cover before I didn't realize that was going on. And then, of course, regarding the teachers, great questions that you had earlier, and you answered them. So I'm glad we're taking that into consideration. That's super important. Javier, thank you for those questions. I agree. We need to know, if there's people out there that don't feel safe coming back, we need to take that into consideration. So thank you. Great presentation.
Dr. Reiniger?
Thank you.
Dr. Reiniger, it's
Yes.
Greg. I have one question, and that is for Dr. Noyola. Alicia, so those who choose the virtual and at home, what about those who their grades fall and they're failing? What are you going to do to remedy that?
Sure, and so those are more of the individual conversations that teachers are going to have with families. There may come a point where we need to have those conversations about whether they are best suited within a face-to-face. And I think one of the things that's going to happen, I think that we have a lot of families that will kind of be watching how it rolls out for face-to-face students. And I would anticipate that what they see will kind of drive their decision when we get to the first quarter. And I would venture to say exactly like Dr. Pettis said, that if we're doing and implementing all our protocols appropriately, that we're going to see those health and safety protocols paying off. And I would anticipate that we would see more parents interested in coming back after the quarter. One of the things that we are looking at also is how do we continue to provide support for students who are struggling. Part of that is within that instructional reset, but also how do we continue to provide tutorial services and assistance for our students that are working remotely. And so I think both of those pieces will come together so that we're able to continue to meet those needs of those kids, because I would be surprised if we didn't have some students that are struggling. The decisions made for the health and safety, but instructionally they may have some issues, and so we're still looking to provide those tutorials and supports and resources for kids. And in some cases, as teachers are visiting with parents, we may wind up seeing that some of them may choose to come back into a face-to-face option.
What about on testing? Is that going to be on an honor system?
So what we have talked about, especially as we talk about our pre-AP and AP courses, one of the things that we worked through when we were doing AP testing, when we were doing TSI testing and programs of that sort, is we actually implemented systems for remote testing and what that needed to look like. The state has said you cannot force students to come in for testing. But we have established protocols that we learned this summer as we were doing all of these other types of testings on how you can still continue to test kids remotely, where they're sitting live in front of the teacher, and they are, you know, they actually have the computer set up in such a way that you're able to see the work that they're doing and things of that nature. So I think that they're, based on some of the work that we did this summer, we think that we can still maintain credibility in the testing that we are going to be implementing as we move into the fall for those remote kids.
Thank you very much. Y'all are doing an incredible job. I don't envy you, and I'm so glad we have all of y'all doing this. You're doing a terrific job. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Ms. Flourier, I would anticipate you might have a question or two. You got to unmute though. Ms. Flourier, can you unmute there you go.
Really?
Yep, now we can hear you.
I wasn't mute, I think the host said mute. But anyway, thank you very much. And we don't have to answer these now because I know that we're in a time crunch, but I would like to have them at some point discussed, you know, in front of the entire board. So it's fine, we can do it now or later. And probably would have a lot more as well. First of all, I want to join my colleagues in thanking staff for doing an extraordinary job. Wow, super wow. Thank goodness we have your leadership, and that will be what will help determine the course of the history we're about to make here. However, a couple of questions, and you know, not to be pessimistic, but to be realistic. Much of what I am reading is talking in terms, Alicia, of if there is one case, the school shuts down for a while, and remote kicks in immediately. So I don't know if that's something that we've thought about, that we've talked to our health experts like Dr. Reininger about, or Dr. Castillo. I don't know what direction the state is going in that, but that's certainly the reading that I've been seeing. So I guess what I'm asking is, what is our anticipated protocol if and when that first one case happens, either to an adult or a child? Because as we all know, we're even more contagious when we're pre-symptomatic. So taking the temperature and all the modifications that we are doing are extraordinarily necessary, but they won't catch, they won't catch everybody. And so I think everybody recognizes that, but I'm interested in that. What's going to be our protocol if and when this happens, and how will we move to do that? The second thing I'm wondering about at some point, please, are, you know, is a more in-depth discussion on the special programming, be it dyslexia, health, be it GT courses, you know, how we're going to handle all of those, and also the arts. You know, what are we doing in terms of social distancing with dance and music, whether it's band or choir and all of that? I know what we did before. I don't know what we're doing now. And then wondering also about athletics. You know, it's a world of difference between tennis and golf and football and basketball. And I'm wondering how we're addressing them, because obviously we can't address them necessarily the same way. So at a future time, when you have time, I would love to have responses to those and probably other questions I'll bring up. But thank you so much. It's so reassuring and means everything that you all have given it, the time and the attention and the focus and the intelligence and the research that you have given it. So thank you.
So I can visit with you on those items, but what I will tell you, Mrs. Flourier, that one of the greatest things that I really am grateful that Dr. Lasos and the board and so forth thought about the opportunity to host our summer programming this summer and bringing in students face to face, because there were a lot of lessons learned. A number of the items that you identified were items that we had to address this summer, because we did have a lot of sports programs, arts programs, special programming that we had to institute processes for And so a lot of those lessons learned this summer, we're actually going to take into the fall, and I think we're that much further ahead in how we will address all of these items that you mentioned. But absolutely, we can sit down and discuss those further, but I feel very confident that those experiences have given us guidance on how we will address those items as we move forward.
Thank you.
Dr. Reininger?
And the big question, ultimately, not right now necessarily, please, but the big question is, what are we going to do if and when something happens? Because, I heard you refer to someone would leave and one person would come back. And much of what I'm reading is not saying that. And so I just think it's important for us to know what is the plan and what thought has been put into that plan so that we will be fully supportive of that plan. I'm sure we.
And the state actually does today, and actually they had given us guidance actually during the summer on what protocols needed to be instituted should a case arise in the summer. And so we have those protocols actually already established from summer. We're fine tuning those because obviously we're looking at a bigger group, but those protocols actually are already established. And so we certainly can send those out to you all through an admin report, or we can, I'm sure that there will be another time where we're going to need to delve deeper as we identify further protocols moving into the fall.
Thank you.
Dr. Reininger?
Dr. Cavazos.
Dr. Reininger, this is Eladio. Real quick, I waited till the end so that I didn't have to ask questions. You guys pretty much asked the questions I had. I wanna commend you all for everything that you're doing, from the plan to the communication. I want to reiterate what Dr. Muñiz and Perez said. Sometimes even if all we tell the community is we don't know yet, that goes a long way with them. I want to reiterate Ms. Fleury's question also because I think it's very important about the protocol, what happens, because that's one of the questions I had. What happens once someone tests positive, whether it be a teacher, a student in a school, because I think that's one of the fears or concerns that parents and teachers have of a mini outbreak in a campus that they're going to take back home to the families, to parents, grandparents, siblings. My two questions that I had, one, are we encouraging, and again, we can, I know we're pressed for time, but are we encouraging somehow teachers, are we going to encourage parents of students to tell us when they have gotten tested? Because someone can go get tested and continue going about their normal life, and sometimes, because I've had the experience where friends have told me, can you believe so-and-so got tested, and they're still going out and doing whatever, when, if they come back negative, great, but if they come back positive, that's already a couple of days that they were maybe at school teaching or attending classes. They got tested on a Monday because they felt sick, or they didn't feel sick, or they just wanted to get tested. Once they get tested, is there any way of us finding out? Can we encourage them to let us know? Like, you know what? I went in for a test, so I'm going to have to stay home. And I think that sick policy or that sick leave, if it's communicated well, it might encourage them to communicate with us, because maybe they're scared that they're going to lose time, and they're not going to communicate those tests with us until they get the results.
Right.
And my other questions was in the pathways that the parents pick. If there's a major spike midway through a grading period, the third or fourth week of a 9-week period, where parents had chosen face-to-face, but all of a sudden things look pretty bad, can they pull them out and just continue doing remote learning at that time, or do they have to wait to the end of the grading period? Those are my two questions. If you want to touch on them quickly, if not, we can visit later, or maybe through the admin report. But again, I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing, the information that you guys are putting out, and more than anything, the work that you guys are putting in. I'm looking forward to hear from Shane on the communication side. So
Dr. Noguera, I'll jump in here. I'm going to go ahead and offer some clarity on some of the things that the board has been asking. And so just want to kind of take us to the 30,000-foot view of what we're trying to stand up in a very unique time. So we are still regulated by the Texas Education Agency, and the Texas Education Agency puts out some very strict guidelines of what we can and cannot do. The flexibility comes in us doing even more versus doing less. And so to give you an example, the Texas Education Agency has said that it doesn't matter if you offer hybrid or you offer remote. It cannot be in lieu of a 5-day-a-week program where you open all your campuses. So let me repeat that. You will not get funded for a hybrid or a remote programming if you don't have your campuses open for face-to-face instruction for all the kids that the parents want to send to the schools. So you can't tell a parent, you have to go hybrid. That is not an option. And so when some of you have seen other districts that have done different things and said, well, we're all going to go online, that is not a model that's going to be supported. And they will not get their state funding. So that we need to be very clear about that the whole movement by the state is that the children have a right to return to their campuses, and the parents have a right to send them to their campuses. And so the building blocks for that is you must open your campuses to any student that wants to return 5 days a week. So our percent at 38%, and it may be 40%, it may be 20%. The bottom line, we have to open our schools, okay? From there, we have building blocks. And the choice is really parents. It's not the employee that has the choice, it's the parents that have the choice. And at any point that the district begins to push parents to make a decision, then you violate the regulations put forth by the agency. And you risk being audited and losing your funding, okay? So you can't tell a kid, look, you probably would benefit better if you go remote. We're going to register you as a remote student. That's not an option to the school districts. So contextually, we have to remember that. So this summer, when we were one of the few districts that did summer programming, we were testing all the modes of instruction. Face-to-face, we were doing blended learning, what we call hybrid, and we were doing totally online to test our broadband, to test the response of kids, to test how we would do things. All of that, we kind of got ahead of the game and have tested. To give you an example, we have 500 students, elementary students right now, approximately, that are enrolled in online instruction as a Jumpstart program. 500. So those are all remote students. However, this is something that we have to wrap our minds around. That model is not going to be the only model that we can offer. It's not acceptable, and it's not going to be authorized by the agency. What you need to know is that all those 500 students are being taught remotely, but all teachers are reporting to the campus to deliver the instruction from the campus, where they have access to all their resources, they have access to our broadband they have access to their computer information. So when we talk about, well, there may be a staff member that may be scared, all that is going to run through the Human Services Department, which there are federal guidelines that require of what we can and cannot do. But you have to keep in mind that when you open schools for the little children, the adults have to return to deliver instruction, right? And so there will be some mitigating factors. For example, there may be a teacher that does great work remotely, has some underlying conditions that says, is there any way that I can have a foolproof remote instructional program? That means I have no face-to-face kids in my classroom. I just report to my classroom, I do my remote teaching, I model what I need to do, I do all my work, but I am there because keep in mind that what the agency has made very clear, at whatever point a parent wants to bring their kids full-time to the campus, they have a right to do that. Now, here's the other thing that's out there, and so I'm trying to clarify a couple of points, is that this is so fluid that you may start with 38% face-to-face, and parents have so much confidence in our protocols that we ramp up to 60% within 3 days or 3 weeks. And keep in mind that we started very small, our summer programming. We ramped up. I mean, we had 200 kids showing up to strength and conditioning once they tested our protocols, right? And so the other thing that the agency just put out, and this just is fresh off the press, is that, number one, the districts can offer a hybrid, but not in lieu of face-to-face. Face-to-face, 5 days a week, is a required program that you must offer. What they also put out is that they're going to allow the districts to have a 3-week phase-in to test their protocols. So let me be very clear. Those 3 weeks, some districts are going to need them because they didn't test any protocols over the summer, right? So they need that. But what is not going to be an option is that every kid who does not have internet at home or does not have a technology tool, you must open your campus and they must return. So you can do a phase-in where you bring groups of kids back. Just as an example, we may say that all the kids that have hybrid, that choose an alternating day, those kids will not report. They'll stay online for 3 weeks, and then after 3 weeks, they'll start migrating into the campus for their alternating day program, whatever that looks like, as a hybrid. But all the kids who do not have internet or technology, we must open our doors for, okay? So I'm going to give you an example. Our latest information, we have about 958 kids that do not have internet connectivity. So even if we did a phase-in, you have a potential 900 kids that will have to return to our campuses, right? So I want to be sure that we all are understanding the fact that when we say we want to protect our staff, and I do too, and we want to protect our kids and so forth, Ms. Luray asked, how many days will we be closed? Well, the state has dictated. If you have a situation at the campus, they just put out their guidelines. Today, they just put out their guidelines. If you have a case, you are not allowed to close for longer than 5 days. You get in there, you disinfect, and you must return to face-to-face instruction, or you are not in compliance with the state regulations. Now, they have a whole group of medical team experts that are working with them, right? But I just sent you those documents, and they're public documents. I sent you those documents so that you can see what the state regulations are. I say that because this is such a moving organization and it's so organic that we're pivoting and we're being nimble to the extent that we can. But one thing that has not changed, and they have not taken any compromise on that, is that you will open your schools. And for parents that want to send them 5 days a week, you have to instruct them. And you have to provide face-to-face instruction. That model is not open for compromise. So we had a couple of districts that said, we're going to spend 3 weeks on just online. That is not going to be acceptable unless 100% of their kids have internet connectivity, and no parents have said they want to come face-to-face, which I doubt. One of the things that I keep getting on information is parents saying, I have to go to work. I got to return the kids, right? Now, we are going above and beyond. There is nothing in the regulations that the agency is saying we must provide water bottles for kids. We must do touchless water fountains for kids. We must have those sprayers to disinfect. There's nothing in the, we're going above and beyond in the protocols because we believe that we have an obligation to protect our kids and our staff in our buildings. And so there's some conversations about, well, can I do remote teach and just stay home? Well, that, as long as we're teaching kids, people have to come back to work, right? And those kids are coming. Now, can we accommodate where we isolate you and we provide you a space where you don't have face-to-face? It depends. Because it also, one of the things the agency has not released and has not relinquished is that all teachers must be certified for the areas they're teaching. So if I have a teacher that is certified to do dual instruction, and I have 10 kids that are coming face-to-face, that teacher has to return. I only have that teacher, right? And so now, the mitigating factor is when they may get the infection or somebody may get, all those protocols, you should feel comfortable knowing that Ms. Scoggin and her group have been working those protocols already. We've had situations because of our summer programming. So what I want you to find is some comfort knowing that as we navigate this big ship and we stand up a very different school district, one of the things that we have to figure out from the very onset is this, is that while you may compromise how you deliver over here, the one thing that has not moved is you will be held accountable through an A through F system. And so quality instruction, and I appreciate Mr. De Leon bringing that up, just talking about the academics, that quality of instruction cannot be compromised, regardless of the modality of delivery of instruction. And that's the purpose of instructional reset, right? And so there's a lot of moving parts, but I appreciate that each and every one of you have read your materials, have been keeping up to date, have asked the questions, but I can't be more appreciative than my staff. And I have to hand it over to my senior team for the incredible work that is being done to stand up a very different school district, but I think one that we're going to be very proud of, because we will continue to deliver quality education. That is our obligation, and we're going to make certain that we account for all kids. And so just find comfort in that, and we're going to continue to work diligently to provide you that information and those guidelines. There's already a lot of buzz because the agency made it very clear that no plan will be authorized unless there's a full face-to-face option on the table. And some districts had moved away from a face-to-face option. That's not allowed. You can't do that. So stick with us. We're going to navigate this. This is interesting times. My son, Chris Matthew, that's got to go back to Tech, they have told him that he has to return, that there will not be a full online option. So he packed a little quicker than I wanted him to pack. So I guess he's ready to go back and tired of being quarantined. So thank you, staff, and thank you, Dr. Noyola, for the heavy lifting, Joseph, Lori, everybody for the heavy lifting they're doing. And we'll keep you abreast of everything that we're doing and continue to make you proud and make this community proud and build on the trust that we've created over time.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. There is no doubt the amount of work that is happening and will continue to happen. And I'm gonna use this as a transition to Mr. Strubhart, who gets to figure out unique ways to communicate all of the complexities that you have just painted for us. So, Mr. Strubhart, would you like to give us a communication plan for reopening update?
Thank you, Chairman Reiniger, trustees, administration, Dr. Cavazos. Yeah, that's a tough presentation to follow. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos, for that close. I forgot everything I was going to say after hearing all of that. That was great information. As you just experienced, there's a lot of information in regards to this pathway to reopening and the situation we're currently in. It is a fluid situation, and which makes it challenging. This summer has been challenging in communicating because much of the information, as Dr. Cavazos alluded to, is we're waiting on from the state level. And so a lot of the questions that parents might have of us, we still have to get guidance from the state before we can communicate a plan. But Dr. Noyola has put together an amazing pathway to reopening plan. And so I'm going to share today our plan, our communication plan, to communicate this amazing plan. Let me just get this going here. I want to first talk about, can y'all hear me okay? I'm using the microphone, not off my computer.
Yes.
Okay, great. I want to talk about the channels of communication. When I speak of channels, you might refer to them as mediums of communication, modes of communication, methods of communication. We call them channels. So think of the old TV that you used, where you used to click, 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 turn the dial, and you went to a different channel. That's how this kind of works here. Each one of these channels is a medium that we use to communicate to all of our ACISD family. And keep in mind, there's not one form of communication that works for everybody. I know that some of us read the paper, but may not be on Facebook. Some people, may get all their information from Facebook, but not read the paper. So it's important for us to exist in all these mediums so that we can do our best to try to communicate with everybody in our community. So I'm going to go over these channels of communication with you, so you know which mediums we're using. Online streaming services. Everyone knows YouTube. Everyone's watched a YouTube video. That is a streaming service that's very popular. But in addition to YouTube, there's also music streaming services like Pandora and Spotify. Think of for those of you who don't know Pandora and Spotify, it's like a radio station, but it's an online radio station. They're very popular, especially amongst young people. In those mediums, we have advertised in the past, and we will continue to advertise in those mediums this new pathway, the pathway options. And so I wanted to share that these online streaming services, we work through a company called AIM Media, who helps us communicate through these mediums. And so that's one of the channels we're going to use, are the online streaming services. Social media. That is one of our biggest mediums for communication. Facebook being the largest way that we communicate with our community. Most of our parents are on Facebook. We did a survey last summer of not all of our parents, but of many of our parents, and it was a face-to-face survey too, asking parents, how do you communicate with the district? And Facebook was the number one choice that they chose. But we're also in other social media platforms like Instagram, which is a growing social media platform for young people. Snapchat and Twitter as well. Snapchat, so that's what all the high school kids are using. So we're using those social media platforms as well to communicate. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. Radio, I think some of you may know Jay Cantu. He's a local DJ. He's also a parent from Long Elementary. And he is also a DJ with iHeart Radio. And so that is like channel, that's 104, 107, KTEX. All the big radio stations. Well, we plan to utilize, we've already reached out to them. We'll be advertising through the radio and also doing interviews. They have opportunities for us to sit down and interview with them live on the radio, so we can communicate a lot of these questions that parents might have about our pathway to reopening. Television, Brianna, it comes from the television world. She's on the Zoom as well. She has a great relationship with all the channels, Channel 4, also Channel 23, now it's all combined, Channel 5 and Fox. We can reach out to them, and they will show up to our events. But they also have morning shows where we can talk in depth about what we're doing with ACISD. They're ready for us, and so we'll be scheduling those interviews. They're real early, so we're going to send Dr. Neola at 5 in the morning to be at those interviews. No, I see her shaking her finger. No, come on, Dr. Neola, help us out here. Also, could someone mute her, please? So RG Vision Magazine, we chose RG Vision Magazine because it has the best distribution model in the Valley. Whether you go to the South Padre Island, Brownsville, to Edinburgh, Mission, you're going to probably see a copy of RG Vision Magazine in an office somewhere or in a convenience store. They do have because of that distribution model and because of the quality of the magazine, we can continue our partnership with them, where we offer a story in every publication. It's a bi-monthly publication and an ad as well. So we're going to continue to do that. That's one effective way of getting the word out throughout the entire Valley. Blackboard messaging. Blackboard owns, they bought out several companies. They bought out our messaging and texting system. They also bought out our the web services that we have. So we use Blackboard to put on for our website, for emails, phones, text. If you're a parent at ACISD, you've gotten a text or a phone call or an email by us using the Blackboard messaging system. It's a very, very convenient, very effective way. We use that to get that great number of responses for our survey. And so something new we're going to add is Google Word Search. I think just about all of us have used Google or continue to use Google. When you go to Google and you start typing in a search and you hit enter, you're probably going to see some ads at the top of that screen. Well, if you are a potential candidate for ACISD or if you have kids, you're probably going to see an ad from ACISD if you're in this area. And so that's something that Brianna is also working on with AIM Media to make sure that we are in those Google word searches. Geofencing, it's a very neat way to effectively reach targeted audiences. Geofencing allows us to select a geographic area. For example, I could choose the Peter Piper Pizza. I want everyone in Peter Piper Pizza that's on Facebook that meets this criteria. I want females from the age of 25 to 40. Maybe they have kids. I want them to see our ad. And so that's geofencing. We can actually target in a geographic area. So we're going to be using some targeted geofencing ads to reach our families in certain areas. Also, we're going to start a video series with Dr. Cavazos and the senior team where we will do a Q&A online. We're going to do it via the studio and via Zoom, where we cover frequently asked questions of our parents. There's so much information that needs to get out. It can't be done in just one form. It has to be done consistently, and different messages need to be sent out. We have a great partnership with Valley Morning Star. Several years ago, they reached out to us. They saw they were producing a lot of stories online, and they wanted us to give them 2 stories a week, and they gave us the Monday edition, or one page in their Monday edition. So every Monday we provide 2 stories to the Valley Morning Star. And Dr. Cavazos called me in a few weeks ago. This was about mid-June. He said, "We need to be very targeted in our Monday stories. I want a story that focuses on health and safety, and I want a story that focuses on academics in the Monday paper." And boy, that was right on the mark. And we've been doing that, and those stories have been gaining a lot of traction. And I'll share a piece of that with you in just a moment. So we continue to use the newspaper as a great way to communicate as well. Our airport app, you've flown Southwest Airlines, we have probably the best real estate for advertising at the airport. When you walk down the hallway after you get off of Southwest Airlines, you'll see our big, beautiful lit sign over there. So we continue to use that. We have a great story to tell. We've got some beautiful ads that we put up there. We're going to be updating that in August with the reopening of our schools. We're going to be doing some direct mail ads as well, explaining the pathway to reopening and our options for parents. And so parents will be getting a direct mail ad at the end of this month, early August. And then our most important channel of communication, and that's our ambassadors. Beginning with our board, tonight you got a lot of information about our pathway to reopening. You are now armed with information that you can share with the community. We continue to do that with other folks as well. Dr. Cavazos, for example, he has several meetings scheduled with our PTA presidents, for example, where he's going to have a conversation with them to talk about our pathway to reopening and to field questions there. He has a meeting scheduled with all of our teachers of the year to inform them what's going on, but also to get feedback from them. And so it's important that we inform the people that we're directly in contact with first, because they're our ambassadors. They're the ones that go out in the community and say, hey, this is what ACISD is doing. And that's always been a great thing about ACISD, is that we have so many champions in our district that continue to share our message. So those are our channels of communication. I'm going to jump into an example of how we tell our story. going back to what Dr. Cavasso said about putting out those 2 stories a week in the Valley Morning Star, here's an example here from Paige talking about Canvas. We had 3 weeks of great stories about academics where we adopted Seesaw for elementary, Google Classroom for middle school, and we adopted Canvas for high school. That's big. Those are big pieces of information that parents need to know. And so, to y'all's point about, we need to be constantly getting the word out. We have been. We've been writing stories about all the things that ACISD is doing on those 2 fronts. And also, we've been writing on the health side. We've been writing about the sprayers, about the washing stations, and the refillable bottles. Those have been very popular stories as well. And so we continue to do that. We're writing some new stories this week. So that has been a great tool for us as the Valley Morning Star. But I also want to share our relationship with Travis Whitehead. I think all of you know who Travis Whitehead is. I'm sure he's called you once, or you've spoken to him and been interviewed by him. He's a great writer. And you can see Dr. Noel on the front page of Sunday's paper over here, where she's talking about the pathway to reopening. We worked with him, and he got us on the front page of the Valley Morning Star because that story was so important. And so we have a great relationship with him and the Valley Morning Star, and they continue to tell our story. I also want to share some of our social media posts. These 2 stories on the right were 2 of our most popular stories on Facebook, and they were the touchless refilling stations for your water bottles and the hand washing station. We had over 20,000 people reached on the hand washing stations, and over 18,000 people reached on the refillable bottles. That's a lot of people. And we had 117 shares on the one and 118 shares on the other. These are little pieces of information that we're putting about. There's so many things that we're doing on the health and safety and the academic side that we're giving them little morsels of information throughout these weeks, because there's just so much to digest, right? And so these were great posts. And then, of course, we're put everything that we're doing on the Valley Morning Star side, we're sharing that on social media and our website as well. We're not just putting it out in one platform. We're putting it out on multiple platforms so that we're consistent with that message. And, of course, there's an academic store. 6,000 people reached on the story about the Seesaw program. Important information, but I wanted to share this on social media, how some of these stories that we're sharing are blowing up because very few districts are putting this information out. ACISD is the only one there's a lot of work going on, and we have a lot to tell. And so people are super excited to see all the things that we're doing. And we still have a lot more, obviously, to tell, right? So I wanted to share that piece with you. And then real briefly, I want to cover the timeline. This is scaffolding, so as we go through the weeks, these will build on top of each other. So we've already started the survey. That was last week. We sent out the survey. We've gotten the survey results with the Valley Morning Star. And in that survey, at the same time we sent out the survey, I want to share this with you. We reached out to the PTA president for the city council, which is Elias Ortega, and B. Cruz, the vice president. We reached out to them last week. And he said, hey, we're putting together frequently asked questions. Can you please reach out to all of your PTA presidents and in turn have them reach out to all of their parents to ask them what are the questions that you want to ask of ACISD? They gave that to us early yesterday, and that is what drove the FAQs that you saw. So Dr. Noyola and I sat down together and we went through every single question that was asked of the PTAs. And what we saw on social media, and that's what formulated our FAQs. So the FAQs have actually been in the works for some time. We just wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to the right people to get those questions asked. So this is week 2. We're launching our social media campaigns. We got our studio of interviews ready to go. Google search is going to be going. We're continuing with all of our Blackboard messaging. We're going to start our radio and streaming services and direct mail mailers next week. By the end of this month, we'll have our airport ad and television interviews done. And then in August, we'll be doing our RG Vision. We'll come out with our next article. And then we're going to continue all of these campaigns throughout the month and into August before school starts. And so there's a lot of information, a lot of different moving pieces, but we are, and the timeline is flexible. As you know, as Dr. Cavazos alluded to, this is constantly evolving, right? And so we're adjusting as the wind blows. We adjust our sails and we continue to move forward. So I know that was fast, but we're still a little short on time. So if anybody has any questions, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Strubhart. Trustees, do we have any questions?
That was an awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Great job, Shane.
Good stuff, Shane.
Appreciate
Good job,
it.
Shane.
Do you ever sleep is the question.
Wait, you all had a lot of questions for Dr. Noyola. Come on, people.
Yeah, I think for me, Shane, the comprehensiveness of what you presented is, so important, in fact, critical to getting the word out to our HCISD family. And the other reality of it, why you have this timeline, nothing turns off on that timeline, right? So, you start in week 1 and things are happening and you got to keep that going, and then you throw in the week 2 activities and week 3, et cetera. And so it becomes layered and complex. And then the fact that you will have more information, new information as things continue to change through all of those channels. So I commend you and Brianna and your whole team and the way you all work together.
Madam Chair, I do have a question for Shane. Shane, great presentation. I agree
Thanks.
with the chairman and the rest of the board and the superintendent. I mean, you're doing an amazing job, and I agree. I don't know when you guys sleep. There's so many questions, and I think Bobby said it, or Nolan said it, where communication is the key, and it is, and I think we're hitting all levels of everything. Is there any way that, and maybe you're already doing it, Shane, you probably are, is there any way that there's maybe a Google Doc so that teachers and faculty and anybody else that has any questions, they can be asking questions live and somebody answering it? Is there any way that there can be that kind of dialogue where, let's say tomorrow there's a question that maybe a teacher has or a paraprofessional or someone has, and they can Google it to and it's just for the HCISD, it's not for the community, so that we can have that dialogue going back and forth so that it's immediate questions, immediate answers.
Almost like a tech support, right? Calling tech support and getting
something like that.
Yeah. Of course, our doors are always open, but I like the chat idea that you have. Almost like when you go online and you want to buy something and the little chat window comes up. Would you like to chat with somebody? Is that what you're talking about? Something along that lines? Yeah, that's a neat idea. I kind of like that idea. I know that we did create an email address called pathwaytoreopening@acisd.org. And Alicia has been responding to a ton of emails that she's been getting. So we do have the email available to us, but that's something that I'm going to write that down, something that we could possibly explore.
And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of staff that have some questions and concerns, but maybe they're shy, or maybe they don't feel comfortable asking their assistant principal or the principal or whoever it may be, and they're able to open up and do it at their computer where no one knows, or maybe they do have to know if they put their name there. So I mean, maybe something that they do have to say it, and they have to identify who they are. But it's still it's a little easier if it's in a computer rather than calling. Just food for
Thanks.
thought.
Thanks for that. Appreciate that.
Very good. So Dr. Cavazos, I'm going to turn it over to you to discuss our 4th agenda item, topics for future meetings.
So as you know, that while all this is happening behind the scenes, trying to stand up a very different school district for the fall semester, the topics that are going to be forthcoming are going to be centered around this very general movement and journey that we're on. However, we're still doing some incredible things, and I want to commend Dr. Noyola and Melissa Parker for submitting the IB application for Vernon Middle School. And so that's in the works. It's been submitted. Of course, they have to go through candidacy phase. They're finalizing their plans for them to come and certify Sam Houston and Austin. And so there's several programs that are in motion that we need to give you updates on. But this is going to take front and center because until we open for the fall, this is going to be the hot topic for now. So.
Well, that is truly exciting to hear, and thank you to the whole team, Dr. Noyola and Melissa Parker, for getting that application in. We're all excited to hear that. All right, folks, what a tremendous meeting. I think every one of our meetings lately just keep, there's so much detail and so much work that you all are doing. I know each and every one of the board just commends Dr. Cavazos, the whole leadership team, and just the staff and teamwork, the whole district. You're lifting everybody up, and we're excited for this new school year, and it is going to be a historic year. So everybody stay safe. Thanks for joining today.
Great job, guys. Great job,
Thanks,
Shane.
guys.
Great job,
Thank you.
Alicia.
Good job, everyone. See y'all later. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
I want you to Google this and listen to this. A lot of, this is the one I was telling you about.